So again, I'm Anthony Coghill. I'm a candidate for City Council. I grew up here. I've lived here my entire life. I'm a proud product of the Pittsburgh public school system. In 1984, I graduated from Brashear High School. When I graduated from Brashear High School, my family, we didn't have the means to send me to college, so I went to work. Went to work for a local roofing contractor, worked for him for 8 years, and then I started my own company, Coghill Roofing Company. I'm self-employed. I've been in business for 22 years. I'm very proud of what I do. I'm very proud of the people who work for me. I know what it's like to, provide jobs and to meet the bottom line. So, I will say this, growing up in Beechview as a poor family, we didn't have a family car. We didn't have much in the way. My mother was a single parent, and I had 2 brothers. So when we talk about hunger issues, it's very near and dear to me. I went through it, okay? We counted on government subsidies. We used to get every month that Father Joe from St. Pamphilus would give us a big bag, and it included a big block of cheese. I don't know if anybody ever else received that, but we had cheese, grilled cheese, cheese puffs, cheese everything, But I'll tell you what, my brothers and I, we still laugh about it today. But I'll tell you what, we needed that. So when we talk about hunger issues, I lived it, honestly. So, and I'll tell you what I would do to confront hunger issues. I would first and foremost support your organization, the Food Harvest, and also the food banks. We have 3 distribution centers here: St. Mark's, St. Pamphilus, and St. Winifred's. So in those 3 distribution, they count on city grant money. So I will ensure that will continue and hopefully increase it. I will also call on our foundations, where most of us have a better half. Mine's here tonight, Miss Lisa Orlando. Hi, honey. And she works for a foundation, the Sarah Scaife Foundations. They give hundreds of thousands of dollars to the food banks. I consider myself a good lobbyist. So when I'm out there or I'm in city council chambers, I will be lobbying because it is personal to me, okay? Near and dear and personal to me. So that's how I feel like I will help, with the hunger problems. It breaks my heart to think a child is without food or a family is in need. And now with the cuts to the benefits and food stamps over the past year, these families are getting about $36 less in their check. So $36 goes a long way, and the need is going to go up as well. So I'm going to make sure that these are supplemented. Does that mean time up or 1 minute? 1 minute. Okay. So I'm going to make sure that all these services are provided. Like I said, I lived it. I've been through it. My family counted on it, and when I see a child or a family that needs food, I'll be the first one up the bat for that family. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ashley Deemer, and I'm running for Pittsburgh City Council District 4, where we sit today. District 4 includes Beechview, Brookline, Carrick, Overbrook, Bon Air, and a little slice of Mount Washington. My family and I live in Beechview too, my husband and son and I. And for the last 6 years, I have worked for Councilwoman Natalia Rudiak in Pittsburgh City Council, representing these neighborhoods. She is not seeking re-election. And so I decided it was really important to continue the good work we've been doing, and that is why I'm running. So I started out in her office as the constituent services manager, getting to know people across the district, talking to folks about everything from potholes to vacant properties, stormwater, you name it. And I helped find solutions for them and connect them to resources that they needed. I was also promoted to chief of staff, so I've worked with the councilwoman on many of her signature issues like early childhood education and paid family leave. And I'll talk a little bit about those because I want to talk about the economic pressures that are facing families across the city and right here in this district that lead to food insecurity, economic insecurity, and hunger. I also, at the end, I do want to talk about the City Parks farmers markets. Because I do think there are ways to improve them and make access to good food equitable across the city. So first, I just want to talk about supporting working families. That is something, labor rights are something I've championed for a long time. We want to make sure people have good wages and working conditions, and we want to make sure everyone has paid sick days, so we don't have folks getting fired when they get sick or their child gets sick. We want to make sure that there are pregnancy protections for moms working, and so that they don't lose their job over expanding their family. We want to make sure everyone has paid family leave as well. So it's not a choice between having kids. Oh my gosh, time is flying. Okay, I'm going to move on. So basic message, economic security is food security. So we also talked a lot about affordable housing tonight. I support the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We need to fund that, and we need a good agreement with our nonprofits in our city, like UPMC and the University of Pittsburgh, because they need to pay their fair share and make sure that the taxpayers aren't taking the brunt of that burden for paying for affordable housing that we so dearly need. I also want to talk about pre-K, because this is another economic pressure that families face. Pre-K is not affordable for many who make just above the subsidy amount, and there's a long waiting list for those who do qualify. So we need to make universal pre-K free to every family in the city. Again, because this is an economic pressure, and we can take that off of people's plates and literally put food on their plates instead. I do want to talk about the farmers markets. The City Parks farmers markets establish a market in neighborhoods where maybe people don't have the capacity to organize their own market, because we can't always look to people in need to organize their own markets or organize community gardens. So they serve a really important function, but unfortunately, the farmers markets are very market driven, and so vendors and farmers go to neighborhoods where they perceive that they will make money, and that it makes it very, very difficult for new markets in neighborhoods that need them to get established and succeed. And every year we have to fight to keep the farmers market in Beachview, and we struggle to attract the kind of vendors that we need to that market, as well as Carrick, and those are places that dearly need fresh food. So I would work to create incentives to bring farmers to markets that are maybe just getting started and not as economically viable. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to questions.
And thank you, Ms. Deemer. Any questions from the audience? See, I mentioned chickens, and now nobody's mentioning them anymore. No chickens. Okay, you and Baxter, do you want to just stand up and yell it out there, and I'll repeat it in case people can't hear you?
Yes, I have a very specific question. First, I want to thank the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council just for hosting this. It's awesome. So our restaurant scene is booming right now. With that, though, we're seeing tons of labor issues. For example, if you go to all these downtown restaurants, the employer makes the servers pay for the credit card transaction fees. So my question to you is, what the hell?
For those who didn't hear, the concern of the questioner was that restaurants, especially downtown, although the restaurant scene is becoming more and more sophisticated in terms of its cuisine, there are still economic justice issues to work out. 1 minute apiece, and we'll start with you, Mr. Coghill.
Well, one thing Lisa and I do like to do is go out and have a nice dinner, I will say. I work hard all week, but that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I didn't know that. That's absurd to me. I will say this, when we go out and have a nice dinner and we have a bottle of wine, it may cost about $130 depending on which restaurant we're dining at. And we're always talking about how the server is underpaid because, most of that is profit. I mean, food does cost money, of course, and wine costs money, but, the markup is probably 100%. So we're always talking about, how we feel the servers are underpaid. And now when you tell me that they're, paying for the transaction fee, well, I think the servers need to stand up and, fight against that. I think if they were to walk out of that restaurant and couldn't serve those people, the owners might think differently about it.
Thank you, Mr. Coghill. Ms. Deemer.
Well, thank you for that question, Jordan. I know you're working hard on this issue. We've talked about it many times before. So a little personal experience. I was a server, and I do know that a lot of restaurants commit wage theft on a daily basis. It is regular practice, and unfortunately, the burden is on low-paid workers to organize and bring suit against those restaurants and go to the National Labor Relations Board to fight it. And that is a very heavy lift for folks who are just struggling to get by. So we've talked about this earlier tonight. The city often tries to pass policy around these kinds of issues and is unfortunately sued because we don't always have the autonomy under state code to regulate private business. I think that we need to be better advocates in fighting for our autonomy as a city to pass laws like this with our state legislatures, not just our local delegation, but leadership in Harrisburg, and I will be a leader in organizing council to do that.
Thanks very much. We got time for one more question here, I think, for these candidates. Go ahead.
What I'm going to say, since the question of servers and restaurants has come up, the question I'm going to ask is, do you support the fight for 15?
The question from the audience here, for those who didn't hear, do you support the fight for 15, the fight for a $15 an hour minimum wage? And we started with Anthony before, so we'll start with Ashley this time.
1,000%. And actually, $15 is not enough. When we calculate out what $15 an hour full time is, it barely comes out to $30,000, and we know that that's not enough to keep up with cost of living. So I absolutely support the fight for 15, and more into the future, and any way that I can support that. In fact, I have supported that. Sometimes when the city is limited by our legal ability to legislate on these issues, we can use the platform of the office to stand on the picket line with workers trying to get a better wage. So hand me a bullhorn, because I am in.
Thank you, Ms. Deemer. And Mr. Coghill.
Well, I worked at Eaton Park as a busboy when I first graduated high school for a year at $1.75, an hour. And yes, I absolutely support $15 an hour. I think anything less is a poverty wage, not a wage. I will say this too. I mean, $15.
Ma'am, could he just finish answering his question, please? Could you just.
Is that restaurant servers are tip dependent. The minimum wage for your server is $2.35. The rest of it is to be made up in tips,
right?
And those tips are heavily taxed.
Right. Thank you for the question. And Anthony, if you want to finish your thought there, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. So no, I know what it's. I absolutely support $15 an hour. In my own business, I pay the people that work for me, I pay them very well, better than any other company in the area. And I pay them well because I expect good work out of them. So I absolutely support $15 an hour. I think that's how you keep good people. I think that, anything less is a poverty wage. And I would encourage any company, and I would encourage certainly the city and the city workers to pay $15 an hour at least. So thank you.
Thanks to both of our city council candidates. Good luck on May 6th.